In the UK, MPs have approved the biggest change to abortion law in England and Wales for 50 years. This change in abortion law, which received very little public attention in the run-up to last night's vote, also received very little in way of proper scrutiny, let alone parliamentary debate. Coming the same week as an expected vote on assisted suicide legislation, it could be, many say, a profoundly dark few days for the UK. Joining us on the line now to discuss this and more on pro-life issues is Niamh Uí Bhriain from the Life Institute. Niamh, thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to talk to you.
Niamh, I want to talk about a few different topics today, particularly what's happening in the UK. It's quite shocking. I remember when abortion was first introduced here in the run-up to the abortion referendum, some almost 7 years ago, the promise was that abortion would be safe, it would be rare and so on. But of course, we've seen abortion numbers skyrocket here in recent years since abortion came in. And the same thing has pretty much happened in Britain in recent years. And now legislation is becoming even more and more liberal. We're promised that legislation in Ireland would always be strict and be safeguarded. But of course, we've seen things change here, and things have changed a lot in the UK. Give us an understanding, just so we understand how things can well change here in Ireland, and most likely will change unless the brakes are put on. Give us an understanding. What's the latest development in the UK?
So it was very sad last night to see that the Parliament in Britain voted overwhelmingly to decriminalise abortion and right up until birth. And what that means is that it's no longer a criminal offence to carry out an abortion right up until birth in the UK. And this is, I think, like almost unbelievable, really, to be honest. You know, I mean, anyone who's had a baby or anyone who's seen somebody who's pregnant at the later stages of pregnancy, like abortion is already legal in Britain to 6 months of pregnancy. It's already legal 24 weeks, which is in itself is absolutely horrifying. But anyone who is seeing someone in the last trimester of pregnancy knows exactly, you know, that sometimes babies born in that trimester survive. Increasingly, they survive. Many of them go on to have perfectly healthy, happy lives. But they will have an understanding of how big that baby is, how developed that baby is, and how utterly and absolutely horrifying it is to think that it is no longer a crime in Britain to kill that unborn child. And some of the comments around this, Arthur, are really revealing. You know, polls have shown, in fact, recently that people living in England are increasingly concerned about the skyrocketing abortion rates there. And they're skyrocketing there in the same way that they're skyrocketing here. I remember in 2018, in the referendum in Ireland, we were saying, you know, that 1 in 5 pregnancies in England was ending in abortion. Now that's gone up to 1 in 4. It passed 200,000 abortions some 5 or 6 years ago. 2022, there were 251,000 abortions just in England and Wales. So, like, you're just seeing these spiralling abortion rates. This obviously a huge failure on behalf of the government in terms of providing proper supports for women. And now what we saw last night was this view that has taken hold in political circles that really unborn babies have absolutely no rights at all. And that even in the last 3 months of pregnancy, an unborn baby aged between 24 weeks and 40 weeks, that even that child has no right, has no protection, should have any protection under law. Because if you're decriminalising abortion, if you're saying that it's not a criminal act anymore to kill a child at that stage of pregnancy, then you are effectively saying that this little human being, just as human as the rest of us, has no rights at all.
You're mentioning this, but I want to fully understand the implications of what's this, because if something is no longer illegal, perhaps it mightn't be au fait, it might not be politically correct, but if it's not illegal, of course, it changes the moral benchmark of what's acceptable and not acceptable. So in terms, you mentioned about safeguards for children, like what constitutes, strictly speaking, the legal definition of what an embryo, what of course is a child inside the womb, and indeed what is a human being, because ultimately if it's not illegal, I mean, partial birth abortion is something is the most horrific thing, of course, but nevertheless it happens. So in terms of the embryo, as the scientific world and the pro-abortion groups will call it, and of course a human being, a child coming from the womb, at what point is this person deemed to be eligible for human rights protections, for life protections, and indeed what point does this start and stop? I mean, tell us about partial birth abortion. Is this something that's actually possible now?
Well, you see, what happens, I suppose, is that your laws all human rights are supposed to extend to all human persons. And the unborn child in the womb is, from a scientific point of view, absolutely a human person. But what we have seen in our own country and what we've seen in other countries is that, for example, we had constitutional protection for the unborn child in the womb, and that was stripped away when the Eighth Amendment was removed, and the law then allowed abortion under certain circumstances. So what the law effectively is saying is that in these circumstances, the unborn child's life can be ended. If your life can be ended, you effectively have no rights at all. And in Britain, the unborn child was able, the law still stands, the Abortion Act still stands. Abortion is legal up to 6 months, up to 24 weeks. But what this change will bring about is that it is no longer a crime. You can no longer be prosecuted if you have an abortion after 24 weeks. And already abortion campaigners are seeking to extend that decriminalisation to doctors as well. So you'll have a situation that even where the Abortion Act doesn't say it's legal to kill a baby after 24 weeks, there are no criminal penalties for doing so. So in effect, that actually makes it legal. And everybody understands this. Everybody understands if there's no criminal penalties or if there's no criminal aspect or criminality attached to a crime, to what used to be a crime, then it is in effect no longer a crime. But it's really, I suppose, the inevitable outcome, Arthur, of where a society goes when it decides that abortion is permissible in almost every circumstance. And that, this lie that is perpetrated that abortion is healthcare, when it actually ends the life of another human being, inevitably will go to where Britain went yesterday. Now, I have to say, given that, right, given what I've just said, what polls in England show is that only a tiny percentage of people, sometimes as low as 1%, actually support abortion until birth. So the politicians yesterday who voted in favour of decriminalising abortion weren't actually representing the views of the majority of people in England, when they voted to decriminalise abortion. Yet they are ideologically wedded, if you like, I suppose, to abortion and to therefore decriminalising it. And you kind of see a lot of that in Ireland as well. So, like most people in Ireland are opposed to late-term abortions, yet they still happen. Like polling prior to the referendum would have indicated that people would be uneasy with spiralling numbers of abortion, would be unhappy with that. And that, in fact, is why the government here at the time of the referendum said that abortion should be rare. They promised, in fact, that abortion would be safe, legal and rare, yet we're seeing spiralling abortion numbers here too. And this is why it's so great to have this chat with you today, because the reason why there isn't a public debate then around spiralling abortion rates in Ireland is because the media effectively sits on that information. It doesn't discuss it. We're not having prime time investigations into why our abortion rate has gone through the roof. Morning Ireland isn't discussing it. The ministers is not being brought on and challenged as to why abortion isn't in fact safe, legal and rare, but is in fact now 50,000 abortions have taken place in Ireland. So it's really, really important, and that's kind of one of the reasons I suppose we're so it's so important to have the Rally for Life, and we'll be talking about that shortly. In July, is because it's so important to bring public attention to the fact that abortion is a horrifying act that is happening increasingly, and that we need to do better for mothers and for babies.
Niamh, I want to understand how much investment the government are making into women, the lives of women and the healthcare of women who are pregnant and wish to continue their pregnancy and bring that baby to full term and enjoy that baby's life. And indeed, how much investment women receive who choose to have an abortion. Tell us, speak to us about this.
I think a lot of people listening will know that abortion is entirely taxpayer funded in Ireland. So GPs who are providing abortions, they're the majority of abortion providers are actually GPs. Because the majority of abortions take place using medical abortion. In other words, the abortion pill is ingested. And one of the things that emerged when Simon Harris was pushing through the abortion legislation, with, of course, huge support from both the opposition and the government parties, was that GPs are actually, in fact, paid more to provide an abortion than to provide maternal health care for a woman who is continuing with her pregnancy or who is pregnant. And it really, I suppose, shone a light on the priorities for this government. That they will pay a doctor more to end an unborn baby's life than to help a woman bring her baby to full term, and I think the only thing, there are certainly elements in the current government and, of course, in the opposition. Sinn Féin is very pro-abortion, People for Profit and the other parties are very much in favour of liberalising even further our already very, very liberal abortion laws. There are elements in the government who would probably like to see abortion completely decriminalised here too, who would probably like to see any kind of safeguards or restrictions completely removed. And I think they are already and have already been calling for something similar than what we saw in Britain last night, for abortion to be completely decriminalised in Ireland as well. So it's not the campaigns are already in place, if you like, to see Ireland's abortion law, despite our spiralling abortion rate, being further loosened. Now, the only thing is I think listeners should know, because many of them probably have contacted their TDs as part of campaigns with Life Institute and others, to retain things like the 3-day wait before an abortion. And in fact, you can see that the power of public persuasion there, because despite huge pressure from the media and from pro-abortion campaigners and from many of the TDs, both again within the government and opposition, that 3-day wait remains. Precisely, I think, because people would be horrified if it was removed. That's not to say there won't be renewed efforts to have it removed, and that's not to say that the government is to be commended for its actions on abortion. It isn't, because what we have learned this year now through a parliamentary question from Carol Nolan is that as of February 2025, there have been 50,000 abortions in Ireland, and that is like an absolute tragedy. It's such a travesty, Arthur, like 50,000 abortions. How many schools is that? How many people, young people who could be part of our society, part of our workforce, are just gone, simply gone. Their lives ended before they ever took a breath outside their mother's womb. And yet the government is it's not even acknowledging that this is happening. There's a complete clampdown on any kind of discussion around that horrifying number. But it's why we need to be at the Rally for Life on July 5th, to be a strong voice for all of those unborn children.
We want to talk about the Rally for Life, as you say, but first of all, I want to get an understanding. Many people will say, look, you're just right-wing, you're extremist, you're anti-women, you're hateful, you're not allowing women to have the choice, my body, my choice. What would you say to this? I mean, what would you say to the people who say that you're anti-women, you're bigoted, you're hateful, you're selfish, you're racist, whatever other labels they may throw at you? What would you say?
Well, it's all just nonsense, really, isn't it? And I think as time goes on, those kind of arguments are revealed to be completely absurd. Women are not benefiting from a situation where so many of them feel that they have no other choice but to end the life of their child. I think abortion adds to the kind of the disrespect for women, the feeling that when we're telling women that we're pro-choice, what we're actually saying is you're on your own. This is your decision. This is your choice. You can live with the grief and the trauma of it. You can bear the burden of knowing that you ended the life of your child. None of this helps women. This is about furthering a kind of society where life is disposable and where men can walk away from their responsibilities. I think anyone who doesn't recognise that isn't actually seriously looking at this issue. So the reason why people come to the rally, and of course there's loads of women at the rally, thousands of us turn up every year, young and old of all ages, mammies and teenagers and everybody else in between. What we're saying is that the government has to do better for women, and the government has to recognise that there are 50,000 babies whose lives have been ended by abortion, and that this is shameful. This is a stain on Irish society, and that we need to address the outcomes of the horrific abortion law. We need to do something to tackle this horrendous abortion rate, because we are literally aborting our future, and that has to stop.
So in terms of where it's happening, when it's happening, tell us more. How can people find more information?
So you can go to the Rally for Life we have our own website, or you can go to the Rally for Life Facebook page or X account or Instagram account, or you can get all that information also on the Life Institute's various social media accounts or on our website. And it's on the 5th of July. It's always on the first weekend of July. It's the biggest pro-life event of the year, Arthur, and I think people who come really enjoy the rally. It's a great kind of coming together. It's a great motivational event. It's a great celebration of life, but it's also where we hold the government to account. So it's 5th of July. We meet at Parnell Square. The rally starts at 1:30 and we march down O'Connell Street, and there are speeches at Custom House Quay. And we have an amazing speaker this year, Dr. Haywood Robinson, who was an abortionist and who, as he says himself, turned towards Jesus and away from abortion. I thought that was a beautiful way that he encapsulated it. I know you're going to speak to him as well, but he's going to be, I think, a very powerful speaker for understanding how we can touch people's hearts and minds to turn them away from abortion. Because in fairness, people are told repeatedly that this is just healthcare, that you're ending something at the very beginning of life, that it's not really a fully formed human being, that we have to help women by ensuring they have access to abortion. And I think Dr. Robinson will be somebody who will really help people to see the truth behind those arguments. And the truth always is unchanging, that abortion kills a living, growing human child, and that we have to do better for women than pretend that abortion is something that helps them.
Just as we finish, Niamh, tell us, give us that website again where people can find more information.
So it's rallyforlife.net, or you can look up the Rally for Life on Facebook or on Twitter. And again, 1:30 p.m, 5th of July, Parnell Square. We'll be marching for life, standing for life. We'd love to see you there.
Niamh Uí Bhriain from the Life Institute, thank you for your time again.
Thank you so much.